PT Pop here, all 4 lows in my brain, securely bound behind my back. And today I'm going to talk about call center training. Stay tuned. My God, you had, we spent an entire 20 minutes on this in class. Don't you get it? In my previous videos, I've made fun of call center training. I've made like little comedy skits about it, but I don't think I've talked directly. I made a video directly about call center training. Now, training lasts anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks. It's an average of something between the two. And if they're hiring you in to take calls on second shift or third shift, training is always on first shift. It'll never be anything other than first shift. And the reason being is that most of the trainers who do the training have seniority with the company, and they've earned their dues, and they're not about to work anything any later than 5 o'clock. They will not work any later than 5 o'clock. Trainers do not work later than 5 o'clock, and they will not work or train in second shift, even if it's more convenient for the employees. They'll pay you extra money for it. They'll pay you like $2 extra an hour. So if you're making $10 an hour, they'll pay you $12 an hour for just the training. And they do that. I'm not certain why they do that. I have never figured that one out, because I'd rather, if you're going to pay me $12 an hour, pay me $12 an hour for the entire time I'm here, not just when I'm in training. The training room in every single place I have ever worked, every single training room is a windowless room, usually in the basement of the building. It's usually tucked far away from everybody else, and it's usually very stuffy, and for some reason, all these training rooms, they cannot control the climate. The thermostat is always broken. So in the summertime, when it should be cold, it's excruciatingly hot. And in the wintertime, if you live in like a Midwestern town where it gets cold in the wintertime, it's freezing. So what you'll see is you'll either see, mostly the women will be walking around with shawls over their shoulders or their winter coats on in the wintertime, or they'll have blankets with them. And it's horrible. It's terrible climate. I guarantee it, absolutely positively guarantee it, a windowless room, somewhere tucked away, somewhere in the basement, with no climate control. Most of the training rooms also have subpar, inferior computers in the room. So you'll go in the first day, and they'll try to get everybody logged into the computers at some point in the day, and half the computers don't work because they're ancient. They haven't upgraded the operating systems. The mice on the computers are broken. The keyboards are dirty, filthy, crusty, filled with boogers and spilled food and crumbs, and they don't work. The video equipment will be archaic. Just the last place I worked was a major bank here in Ohio. They did not have video equipment, appropriate video equipment. They the training room we were supposed to go in had been taken over by like the marketing department. So they kicked all of us out. You gonna stop there, Chico? There you go, buddy. They kicked all of us out of the training room and put us in this horrible other room that didn't have a video projector hanging from the ceiling. The trainer had it stacked up on a bunch of textbooks. The projection screen was a couple of sheets of that big giant manila paper taped to the wall, and it kept coming untape and would fall to the floor. And the next thing you can expect is that they're going to try to get you used to not taking breaks, because on the call center floor, you're not going to be permitted to take breaks. You're only going to get 2 10-minute breaks and a half-hour lunch, and that's all you got. So in the training room, they try to push it by saying, okay, well, we've been training for 3 hours. Does everybody want to take a break now, or would you rather wait another hour? So then go to lunch, and then you'll have a trainer. Now, almost all the trainers I've ever had, most of them are women. I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know why they come up with this, but it's usually a woman. I have had several men. The male trainers are better than the female trainers, because I think men, I don't care if it sounds sexist, I think I'm correct. Most male teachers I've had are better communicators. They're more patient, they're more clear, concise, and more organized. You'll find that if you do have a male trainer, he or she will be very effeminate. I don't know why this is. I have no idea. I've never figured that one out. They usually, and I don't know if they're gay or not, but they're metrosexuals or something. But I make fun of them in my videos, not because I'm putting down gay men or anything, but most of the men that do training are highly effeminate, and they prance around the room, and it's just the weirdest thing to watch. I just wish I could videotape some of these people.
So training is going to be the equivalent, I call it the equivalent of about a semester's worth of college work forced into anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks of training. So they're going to ask you to learn what most college students learn in an entire semester. They're going to ask you to cram that into 2 days to 2 weeks of training, no more no less. And it's going to be intense, overwhelming, and they're going to tell you, but you can do it because you're just the special people that are going to run our call center.
And the sad part of it is it's really not 2 weeks of training, because the first day of training is basically a blow-off day. You'll get there, most of your co-workers will show up 10 to 15 minutes late because they couldn't find a building or they couldn't find the training room. Then it's introductory time. So if you've got 30 people in the class, they give you a couple of minutes for each person. They go around the room and they tell each person to just give us a brief introductory statement about yourself. Tell us where you're from, where you used to work, what your hobbies are, and tell us one thing about yourself that no one else knows, you know. So you go through, you know, and nobody wants to do that. Nobody really wants to talk in front of everybody. Because for the most part, people are pretty, like, withdrawn and shy.
After first day introductions, and everybody, you know, the first day introductions, they go around the room, the trainer introduces themselves, gives you some background information, and then all of yourself and the 30 other schleps in the room will be like, hi, my name is Pete, I used to work at Wells Fargo, I love classic rock, and one thing nobody knows about me is my favorite color is blue. And then the training will commence usually near the second half of the first day, usually after lunch when everybody's tired, and they're all into, you know, carbohydrate coma, or in a food coma. So, training will usually, and they'll just rush through everything, they'll rush. And the one thing in training is, and in any corporate environment or in any group environment, you'll find there's always one person that's one of your peers that's in training with you, sitting alongside you. There's a very dominant type A personality. And anytime the trainer will finish a topic, like let's just say they finished billing, okay, and that was billing, does everybody get it? One person in the whole group will speak for everybody else and go, yeah, we got it, let's move on to something else. I don't know how this one person knows that all 29 other people completely understood. Word of advice is you've got to learn to speak up for yourself. If you don't understand something, you've got to raise your hand. But unfortunately, what you're going to find is every time you raise your hand, the trainer is going to go,
okay, well, I'll touch base with you after we're done with this segment, okay?
Which means he really doesn't want to help because he doesn't have time. And he's going to try to talk to you about it outside of class, but there really isn't time. I've tried this. I've asked for assistance outside of class. And they always go, well, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. Once you get on the floor, there'll be people on the floor to help you. And it'll go something like that. They're going to give you a 3-ring binder that's 3 to 4 inches thick. And they're going to tell you
that this is your Bible. They'll say, this is your Bible, and you'll live by this book.
And the trainer will have this binder. And the binder, the training binder really looks like this. I think this is a 3-inch binder that holds 600 sheets. Now this isn't a training binder from work. This has all the lyric sheets that I used to use. I've got all my lyric sheets scanned into a iPad now, but this is basically what you'll get in training class. And the trainer will be like, okay, let's go to tab 1. All right, okay. We'll start with something simple like the email system so we don't overwhelm your little brains. And then he'll go through this entire binder. And all he does, he or she will deal with, he'll have a projection screen and a whiteboard behind him. He'll just read from it. And they'll just sit there and they'll go, okay, the email system. Is everybody familiar with Outlook? Okay, we'll show you how to get logged into Outlook. Logging into Outlook, this can be fun. Everything's fun here. And it'll go on like that for hours. And then when they're done with the class, I was in one class and they said, okay, we're done with our binders. Let's shred them. And we're all like, shred them. So they basically handed us a 3 to 4 inch thick binder with all the information about the products and services. Then at the end of training, they had us dump the entire binder, the contents of the binder, into a shredding bin, or these big plastic recycling bins, because we weren't allowed to take them on the floor. You couldn't have pens, paper, telephones, coats, anything on the floor. Everything else had to be locked in a locker. So you had nothing to refer to, because then they would say, well, everything that you learned here is on the intranet, the company's intranet. So everything you learned here, you'll have access to on your computer. That's if you can find the intranet on the computer, and if you actually have time to log into it when you're on the phones. Then also on the first day, another thing they'll do is they'll have system log-on time, where the trainer has his binder, and he's like, okay, everybody, we're gonna give you LAN IDs, and we're gonna give you passwords. We're gonna get everybody logged on to the system. It's so exciting! It's so much fun. And then he goes, okay, Pete, your user ID is PI 2638, okay? And then your password is going to be 123456 And then you'll go to your little computer and you'll log in, you'll type it in, you go, Mr. Fliedermeister, it doesn't work. And then the guy next to will be like, hey, Mr. Fliedermeister, my user ID and passcode, it doesn't work. And the trainer will always go, oh my God. I've got to call over to IT and see what happened. I don't think everybody got access. They were supposed to give everybody access today, but they didn't for some reason. Every single freaking company I've ever worked at, as far as the call centers go, they always screw up the user ID and passwords to give people access.
And some people will get partial access, like they'll be allowed to get onto the LAN or the local area network, but they're not able to get to anything else. Then the trainer will be like, oh my God, we've got to get access. Tomorrow you're going to be on the phones. And he runs out of the room. You know, he'll be gone for like an hour while everybody's sitting there in the class picking their nose.
At the end of every training, there's a graduation. It's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. I mean, you know, some places hand out diplomas. It's so demeaning. It's so degrading and just so lowbrow. It's just like ridiculous. But they hand out diplomas, you know, and they'll have a party on the last day of class. They'll bring in pizza. Pizza is the opiate for the masses in a call center. Pizza and donuts. If you bring donuts and pizza in, you practically, the people will fall to their knees and bow to you as if you're some mythical god or goddess.
They'll give a tour of the call center. If you haven't seen the call center yet, let's go take a tour of it, you know. So they get everybody to stand up at their desk, and they'll file out the door, and the trainer will be the head penguin, and all the little penguins will be waddling behind them as the, you know, tour gives you, there's the men's room, there's the ladies' room, here's the cafeteria that closes at 5 o'clock. Most of you don't get here till 4, so you won't have a chance to use it. Isn't that too bad? A lot of big call centers have a weight room or a training room. So I'll show you the training room, and then I'll take you to around the building and show you where all the people sit to take the calls. Then they'll have people come in to introduce themselves throughout the day. Other managers that are going to be your managers on the floor. The vice president of the company will come in. The president of the company will come in. The head of human resources will come in. And human resources always comes in on the first or second day to talk about, you know, do's and don'ts of working in a corporate environment. You can't hug people. You can't grab their nipples, things like that. You know, pretty basic stuff. But they've got to go over the stuff like dress code, what you can say, what you can't say, that they have an open door policy. They have an anonymous tip line if you're harassed at work or you're attacked or something happens. You can call this tip line where they say that you know, you can turn people in if something bad is going on in the company. It's like a whirlwind. It's just a whirlwind. It's just they run through all the products and services that company happens to offer, and they don't give you time to learn it because they don't have time, because the trainers are pushed. They're under a very tight, rigid schedule. The corporate enforces upon them because time is money, and they got to get people on the phones. They've got to throw bodies at the phones because the call volumes are so high, because these companies have gotten so massive and they're so huge that they have to get people on the phones constantly because the turnover is so high. So they constantly have training classes, and they constantly have turnover, and they constantly have to throw people at the phones. Then you'll have a day where they'll go over the phone system with you. With the phone systems and the email systems, of course, are the easiest things in the world to use. One thing that's extremely important to know is if you're about to take a call center job and you're about to start training, they're going to tell you this in the interview. You're not allowed to miss any time, any time at all in training whatsoever. Because they say we have so much material to cover, it's going to be almost impossible to go over it with you. So if you miss one day, that's like missing a whole Bible worth of stuff. So we're going to have to let you go, fire you, and you're going to have to reapply and come back. So you absolutely positively cannot miss any time in training, and you can't be late. You cannot be late, and you cannot miss any time. I worked in a call center out in Phoenix where I left for work with more than enough time to get to work. But in Phoenix, if there's an accident on the 10, which is what I had to drive to get to work, you can expect to be delayed at least an hour from wherever you're going. So there happened to be an accident. I got to work 2 minutes late. 2 minutes late. And the trainer, this mega bitch trainer, locked the door on me and made me stand outside, knock on the door, and she ignored me at first. Then she opened the door, and in front of 30 other adults, she goes, "You know you're supposed to be on time, don't you?" You know, I'd rather have her pull out a paddle and swat me in front of everybody than berate me in front of a bunch of people. But she seemed to get her jollies off of it. And I won't go into that about her, but you're going to be humiliated in training at some places if you don't show up on time, if you don't know what you're talking about, if you ask too many questions. You get on the phones, you're going to be completely overwhelmed because all this information is going to be like, oh my God, this customer is asking about something that I learned 3 weeks ago. Now, another thing, you're going to start doing things as you were trained in training class. Now, the thing you've got to remember is the people that do the training, most of them used to work on the phones at some point in their past, but it was usually 15, 20 years ago when the call center first opened, okay? So they're going to be giving you information as how they remember how to do it, or some variation of that they've been taught over the years. And then once you get on the floor, you'll be answering your question. You'll get the call graded by your supervisor and the quality assurance team. and they'll pull you aside and say, hey, why did you tell this customer this information? And you'll say, well, that's what Mr. Fliedermeister said to tell them in class about this product. Oh, no, we don't do it that way anymore. I'll have to talk to Bill about this because you just gave the customer wrong information. That's not how they access this part of their account. And you'll be like, well, that's not what I was told. Well, I'm sorry. You should have known this. I'm going to have to dock you points on your quality review. And you're like, well, that's not what the trainer told me. And there basically is pushback. You could sit and get into a verbal exchange with your supervisor for an hour about this, and they will not waver on this because they're assuming you're lying. They're assuming the trainer's right and you're wrong, and there's no way you could possibly know how to do this the wrong way because you just had 2 days of training. They'll say this too.
They'll say, oh, you just got out of training and you don't know this? You mean you had 2 days of training and you don't know how to do this? How would you not know how to do this?
Oh my God, you had, we spent an entire 20 minutes on this in class. Don't you get it?
You're going to get outdated information. So if you're new to call center work and to customer service, they're really not going to have time to go over how to handle extremely irate customers. Now, they do have some real hokey training attempts in training to do it by doing role playing. It's another thing they do in training is role playing. Oh my God. And I don't mean kinky role playing. I wish it was, but it's nothing. There's nothing erotic about this at all. They make you stand in front of the room with another employee. And one employee will pretend to be the customer, and the other employee will be the customer service rep. And they'll have little questions like, how come I can't access my account? I'm locked out. What do I do? And then you're like, well, and then they try to have you walk through what you should say in these different situations. And oh my God, it's awful. It teaches you nothing, especially if you're self-conscious at all about yourself and being in front of people. But it doesn't really work because the minute you're on the phones, nothing ever happens on the phones like in training. And customers will come up with these really odd, out of left field questions and scenarios that nobody in their right mind could think of other than some crazy customers sitting there with a crack pipe in their hand and a beer in the other hand. They're like,
Yeah, I was talking to my dog the other day, and he was reciting the Bible to me, and I realized I was past due on my credit card bill. Okay. Do you want me to call an ambulance or help you with your bill? You know, want me to call the psych ward?
So to wrap up, you're going to get hired, you're going to go into training. Training's going to last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. You're going to be trained predominantly by a woman. Usually somebody that's got a certain amount of tenure with the company, but hasn't been on the phones in a good 20 years. You're going to be inundated and overwhelmed with just gobs of information that you'll never be able to retain just from sitting there listening. You should take notes, but they won't let you take the notes onto the floor, so it's pointless to take the notes unless you're going to go home and try to read them over at night. Training the first day is basically like a blow-off day with introductions and human resources coming in. And then they'll start training. They'll go through like each product and service. They'll give maybe half an hour to 40 minutes to each product and service, and boom, 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 they run through it. They give you computer access. The computer accesses don't work. After all the training, the final day of training is usually review to prepare you the next day for the test. There's usually a test that takes about an hour. It's all computerized. You get 3 chances to take it. Most people, I think everybody passes the test. Once you pass the test, the next day they have a graduation where they give you a diploma and they give you pizza and donuts. And then that following Monday, graduation, and the test is always on a Friday, and the first day you're on the phone is always on a Monday where you start your shift. And you should come in on second shift. Training is always on first shift, and your shift will always be on second or third shift. They very rarely hire anybody in the first shift unless you have really good connections inside. So if you like my videos, give me the thumbs up, the snooter. Tell people about my YouTube page. Nothing fancy here, pretty much straightforward and some silly stuff. Have a good day. Bye.